What's up, guys? We are back with another NECA Turtles review, jumping back into the Mirage side of things, and we are adding on to something that we got in one of the loot crates. So we got that claw shredder whenever that was, last year, right? And we are getting the other clone shredders. We've got the forearm shredder and we've got the little baby shredder down there. So we've got a 2-pack of figures. This time around, of course, this is another Haulathon item. We've got them here in similar but slightly larger packaging for the Mirage line. So you've got the figures there in the big window. We've got some Eastman artwork down there on the bottom and also on the side panels, and then the back of the box gives us that cool comic panel style spread of product shots, as well as a little cross sell for some other figures in the Mirage line. So let's do it. Let's pull these guys out and take a look. And here we go. Out of the package, our NECA Mirage Shredder clones. And these, of course, complete the trio that started with the claw shredder that we got whenever we got him in the loot crates a while back. So we've got our multi-arm shredder and we've got our mini shredder, so the little guy, the big guy. And these are two very, very different kind of figures. The little guy here is very much as minimal action as possible when it comes to action figure, but we've got some cool stuff to talk about. So I'm going to move him aside and we'll get to him. We'll talk about him here in a minute. We're going to focus on the big guy here. So he's fairly normally articulated for this line. Obviously, he is a little bit different. His forearm setup is going to, it's going to get in the way. So we've got a head that can look up a little bit. He can look down really good, and then you can rotate. You don't really have much else. The arms on this guy do go out. All of them are articulated in the same way. Of course, they're going to kind of get in each other's way as you move them. But they work okay, and you can rotate them. They're kind of tight. The clearance is very tight across all of this, and it's not really a huge deal. It's just something to keep an eye out for. You got your bicep swivel. We've got double jointed elbows, and I'll say, like, right off the bat, all of these are kind of difficult to articulate at the elbow. And the 90, it's like a 90-degree situation here with the elbows, even though they're double jointed, because we've got these big gauntlets. I will also say the arms all come apart too. So there is an accessory that we'll talk about here in a minute. So I find myself popping these arms off quite a bit just because, when you try to move them, that wants to go with it. You've got, we've got hinges and rotation at the wrist. So normal stuff at the wrist, really, really normal arms. They just happen to be, 4, and they're crammed into a relatively normal sized torso. Like, he's not a humongous figure by any means. And then really all you've got is a waist twist down here. I thought he had more just based on how he looks, but there's no other movement down there. Legs go out about that far. They kick forward, not all the way. There's, you got a skirt thing going on down there. Backwards a little bit. You got your thigh twist up there. We do have double jointed knees. They go back about that far. And then as far as our ankles, you've got rocker, really good rocker, and pretty decent hinge too. Like, nothing really in the way. There's no boot cut or anything on this guy though. So he's still fairly normal. Like, don't get me wrong. He's still very much in line with like the claw shredder in terms of articulation and some of the other Mirage stuff we've gotten. It's just he's got a little bit more of it. And there's obviously going to be stuff getting in the way of itself because you've got 4 arms on a, well, we'll say relatively normal sized torso. He's a little beefy, but he's still kind of normal. And then we've got our little dude here, and he doesn't really have much articulation. He's not a slug figure by any means, but he does have some. So he's got a head that can look up and down, and it swivels. You've got to kind of watch the spikes because his helmet wants to sort of catch on those. The arms can swivel in and out, and then they can rotate. They have no other joints, though. There's no wrist. There's no elbows or anything like that. And then you've got pretty normal legs, honestly, in terms of the hips. So you can kick forward and backward and kick them out. But the legs are always in this sort of squatty pose. So he's pretty much always going to be like that. But you do have ankle hinge and rocker, which I was kind of surprised to see that. I wasn't expecting to see that, especially for something so tiny. I found them to not be all that necessary, though. But he does have some articulation. Like, he's not a slug, unmoving figure, but he also is going to be stuck in a pretty small array of poses just because of what he can and can't do. I'm not too upset about that, though, because, let's be honest, he's a tiny little guy, so I'm not sure cramming him full of articulation would have truly helped him all that much. It probably would have made him quite a bit worse. Now, visually, I think they pretty much nailed these guys. They definitely fall in line, of course, I'm going to say it again, they fall in line with that claw shredder that we got in the Loot Crate, and they very much fit the mold for all of the other Mirage foot characters that we've gotten. So, of course, foot soldiers and the shredders that we've gotten so far, and they look really good. They're very different figures, so I like the fact that they're included together. Like, there's definitely like, opposing sides here. You've got this really big burly four-arm dude, and then you've got this little tiny shredder guy. So I really like the fact that they packed them together. Colors look great. Paint is really clean and crisp on both of these guys. And again, typical fashion for the more, art style of turtles. We've got all of those black lines all over them. So very much in line with what you would expect to see from all the comic-based stuff that we've been getting so far. And this guy in particular, the multi-arm shredder, I think he looks tremendous. I really like what they did to cram those arms in there. Again, he does kind of get a little bunched up when you want to move him around, but it's not really a problem. It's just something to keep an eye out for. I think they did a nice job of making him kind of beefy, but he's not humongous, and he's not supposed to be humongous either. He's big enough to accommodate those arms and still look like they could be coming out of that chest. I mean, there's like just enough room there to get all that business going out. I really like the metallic that they used on these figures for the gauntlets, for the shoulder pads, for the helmets. It's not super, super bright, but it has some luster to it, so it wouldn't kind of take away with some of the more matte finishes that we see. Like this metallic, to me, looks okay, still in the confines of a comic book line. So you've got a lot of matte finish, and then a slight sheen on the metallics. The little dude here, I think he looks great. I mean, he's kind of ridiculous looking. I mean, he's incredibly weird. All three of these, when I'll do a comparison with the claw shredder, of course, but all three of these are just weird looking shredders. But I think I like the little one the most. There's something about this guy, despite the fact that he obviously can't do a whole lot. He can do a decent amount. I just really like this guy. It's a weird looking shredder, and he's certainly going to kind of, despite how small he is, he's going to stand out on your shelf. And I just think they did a really, really solid job here. Sculpt is great. Paint is really clean and crisp. And it's cool to see these two, very much opposing sides of shredders crammed into one box, and you've got your big four-arm guy and your little dude. Now, as far as some size comparisons go, we've got Mirage Leo on the right, we've got Mirage Claw Shredder on the left, and you can see what I'm saying where these guys all kind of line up pretty well just because of the fact that the multi-arm isn't exactly a massive figure. He's just slightly beefier. He's got kind of a tree trunk chest going on, and he's got a bit larger legs and arms, that kind of thing. But otherwise, he's very much in line with the Claw Shredder. And let's move Leo aside. Let's do a Super 7 figure. So here is the Thundercats Monkeyan. I mean, he's quite a bit larger in many ways, slightly taller than the multi-arm for sure. And let's do a Hasbro figure. So here, let's take the Claw Shredder away. Here's Spirit from Classified. Let's take Monkeyan aside, and here is a Mythic Legions, just for another 7-inch scale figure, so they kind of line up pretty well. And let's do one other. How about a Figure Arts? Here is, which one is that? That's Superhero Piccolo. So you get a pretty good idea of what these guys look like. Not massive for the multi-arm, and of course the mini shredder is, well, he's quite mini, but multi-arm shredder is fairly in line with the other NECA Mirage stuff we've been getting, and he just happens to be slightly thicker in the chest, arms, and leg area. Now, as far as accessories goes, not a great deal with these. I mean, I suppose we could have the argument that the mini shredder is an accessory to the multi-arm shredder. It's a 2-pack. He's definitely not a normal figure, so maybe that's kind of what we're working with here. Basically, all the stuff we get is for the multi-arm shredder. So you get extra hands to start with, so we've got style posy hands, fists on him in the box. Of course, all these hands are going to be interchangeable. And then we get a set of gripping hands, and you get a set of flat palm, like chopping style hands as well. But the big accessory, well, it's not big, but I guess the more important accessory and the more, very comic-y accessory goes with what I mentioned previously, where the arms come off. So we've got these little attachments that you can pop onto. Well, you've got one that pops onto an arm. And again, all the arms come off. And then the arm that you take off, you've got another one that you pop on here. So if you're familiar with these characters in the Mirage setting, these are like the worms that make them what they are. So you've got the worms coming out of the severed arm, and then you've got the worms coming out of the, the other side of the severed arm. So you've got something that is very much pulled directly from the comics, because this is the whole whole deal behind what these guys are is the worms that eat the body and then become whatever that body used to be or whatever it was. So kind of a weird thing. Honestly, I couldn't remember what these were right at first. I was like, why am I continuing to pop these arms off? And then I realized, oh yeah, they have the worm thing. So interesting little accessories. You know, I don't know if I'm going to use them. I might go for this one on the multi-arm just to give him something a little bit, you know, maybe asymmetrical. But there's not a lot that they really have to give them as accessories. So if you want to count the little dude as an accessory, then he sort of is. But we've got a few extra hands for the multi-arm, and then the always important worms. So yeah, overall, I'm really happy with this set. Again, it's kind of cool to be able to just get these done right now. We've already had the claw shredder. It's nice to get both of these in one package and just knock it out, because the mini shredder, I mean, he's definitely more in line with an accessory than an actual figure, but it's definitely kind of a two-pack. The multi-arm is probably more the star of the show, I'm sure, because he's so big, and he's got the crazy forearm setup, which is definitely not something you get with a lot of figures. So it's cool to see that, and it definitely works pretty well. I don't have too many issues with it. The arms are kind of bunched up, but they all work just fine. And then the mini shredder is really cool on his own. I mean, again, I really like that little guy. I think he's goofy looking, and he's going to look really cool on the shelf with the other two. And then we've got a couple of accessories, nothing too crazy, because again, there's not a lot that you can give these guys, but some extra hands and the worms to kind of drive it all home and sort of sell the storyline that they're going for with these three clones. So that's going to do it for this look at the NECA Mirage TMNT Shredder clones. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.